Participant. Good morning, everyone. I'm thrilled to have Samantha Holland from Scotland here to lead my class this morning. I will let her introduce herself. And she comes from a different training than the Novato Institute, and I'll let her say a word about that. And Samantha is a personal friend, and we've even met each other in person when she actually came to California for a workshop. And but I was so impressed with her presentation at our convention. Actually, I think she presented 2 years in a row. And I'm just very thrilled that she agreed to lead the class this morning. So Samantha, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can go ahead and I will put you on spotlight.
Okay, thank you very much, Susan. I'd completely forgotten I had to introduce myself, but I was trained at Essential Somatics. So Martha Peterson trained me, along with like Laura Gates, who I know a number of you might know, and Colin McDonald and the rest of their team. So we're called Certified Clinical Somatic Educators. It's a different label. We do the same stuff, although probably slightly differently. And that may show up in class today. I don't know, different movements that seem familiar to me or different phrases. So that might be interesting for people. And yeah, I live in the Highlands of Scotland. I do see clients. I also do somatic experiencing, and I run a bookshop. So that's fun, where there are copies of somatics prominently displayed at all times. And people do get them. So that's pretty good, because I live in the middle of nowhere. So yeah, we will start. I'll give a very short précis of the kind of theme of the class, and I'll also let you know now that we're going to start standing. Most of the class will be lying down on a mat, but we will start standing. I don't need to see you, but I just want to warn you, because that's what you'll be doing any moment now. So the whole of this class really is fairly simple movements, which is always a bit risky to say, right? But they are fairly simple, but focusing very much on the relationship between the periphery and the center. That is incredibly important to Tom Hanna's work and to why it works, right? So I'll be guiding you through the movements to invite your soma, your brain, your nervous system, however you think of your soma, to experience, but also consider how movements in your hands, your feet, your neck, and your jaw create movements or have other effects, right, on your somatic center, in particular, your belly, your lower back. And also, hopefully, we'll have time to do some movements that consider kind of the interface, as it were, of your hips and your shoulders. So where your periphery starts moving into your center, where these things connect. So the movements are geared to your thinking and experiencing yourself as a whole soma, with full body patterns, with all your connections and sometimes areas of disconnect or disconnection, right? Thinking about your habits and those full body patterns that we do try to address with this work. So we will start standing. And whether or not you're standing right now, you might be thinking about how you're going to come to standing or sitting down for a bit. Whatever you're doing right now, I'll invite you also to start by taking a look around the space that you're in, however familiar you are with it, just to make sure that your whole self, right, your embodied self, feels safe and familiar with the space around you and knows what's there, where you're standing, where you're going to be lying down, what the atmosphere is like, right? And while you're doing that, I guess just a reminder, as Susan would often do, to never move into pain throughout class, to never stretch, only ever pandiculate, right? And to only move as much as within, or maybe at the edges of your comfort zone. Remembering you can always make movements smaller, you can modify them, you can do them in your imagination. And it's important for all of us and clients, right, to remember that movements are still effective when you imagine or visualize them. And it's also important to remember that often less is more, especially I think in this class. So it really makes sense to sometimes experiment with smaller movements anyway. It doesn't have to be because of a mobility issue or because you're not comfortable. Sometimes you might notice more if your movement is smaller. Sometimes experiment with larger movements too, okay? So as you're standing, and you can do this sitting or lying down if you need to for any reason, but notice how you're standing and notice your breath. Close your eyes if that's comfortable for you, when it becomes comfortable for you. And remember that standing in one spot, which we'll be doing just for a short bit of class at the beginning, needn't mean standing still, right? So if you need to sway around or you shuffle your feet a bit, that's fine. This is not about being still. It's just about noticing how you stand. And one thing you might want to do to start, in fact, is get some movement by yawning. You might have to fake yawn, but you might actually be able to yawn. So if you open your mouth as if you were yawning, and most of you are on camera, which, you know, really helps, and maybe move your arms the way you might when you're waking up and yawning, and just let your soma move however that makes sense to you if you were yawning. And as you take your time doing that, you might also notice that the way that you're standing, having had a bit of a yawn, has shifted a little bit. So just notice that as well. So as you're standing, can you notice how your feet greet the floor beneath you? Is your weight evenly spread across your 2 feet? Or is your weight more into the front or the back, or the inside or the outside edge of one or both feet? And this is all about noticing, not about judging or changing anything. You're just observing what's there. And notice if you, as a whole person, right, feel weighted into and supported by the ground, or if you feel a little like maybe you're holding yourself. You're not allowing yourself to be supported into the ground. Again, just notice that. And then just shift your attention to your hips and your pelvis, to this whole pelvic girdle area. And does that feel weighted into and supported by your legs down through your feet and into the ground, the earth beneath you? Again, it might not. There might be areas of tension or areas that feel a bit held in space, and it's all about noticing that. And then shift your focus to your torso, to your rib cage. Notice your breathing. And can you tell? How does your rib cage feel? Do you sense it? Does that make sense as a question? And where do you have the most sensation of your rib cage? Is it you're breathing into your front, your back, your sides? Just notice. And again, does it feel supported by and weighted down into your pelvic girdle, through your feet, into the floor beneath you? And then just focus on your shoulders and your whole shoulder girdle. Just be conscious that the way that we're, I'm going to say designed, but the way that we are, the way our skeleton is that your shoulder girdle is designed to be supported by the rest of your body. So do you feel a sensation of being supported by your rib cage, your pelvic girdle, through your legs, your feet, down into the ground? Or do your shoulders feel, or one of your shoulders feel, right, held up in space? You're just noticing. And what about your arms and hands? How are they almost in conversation with your shoulder girdle and the rest of your soma? Are they weighted down, hanging comfortably? Or are they perhaps held with some tension in space, or maybe you're resting them on part of your body? Notice which way each hand is facing, and if they're facing in the same direction. Just notice and just breathe. And then the top of your soma, right? Your head and your neck, notice how they feel. Is there a sensation of being supported by your shoulders, your pelvis, your feet down into the ground beneath you? Or is there some unnecessary effort? You're holding your head and your neck in space. Just notice yourself as a whole and just breathe. Now, I'm just going to ask you to take this awareness of yourself as you've been standing and take that to lie down on the ground on your back. Take your time getting there. And if you're able to, when you are lying down, can you start lying with your legs flat if you can? If that doesn't work for you, you can have a bolster under your knees, or you can, of course, have your knees bent. And take your time. If you need something under the back of your head, that's fine. Be comfortable. Don't stress any part of you. We're trying to relieve stress, right? We're trying to release stress. So still take your time. You've got time. I'm just going to say that we're going to, you're now going to give yourself a soma scan in this new position. It'll be shorter, but you're in a new relationship with gravity. But we'd be kind of considering, or I'll be asking you to consider the same parts of yourself, parts of your soma. So just notice where and how your feet, your heels meet the floor. Okay. They're in a very different relationship with gravity here. Your feet are not taking all of the strain. And then just notice how and which parts of the back of your pelvis meet the floor. And if any parts of the backs of your legs meet the floor. So just notice that contact. Is there contact between the floor and your rib cage in your back at all? There might not be, just notice. And then just sense your shoulder blades. Where might there be contact with the floor there and with your whole shoulder girdle, right? The back of your shoulders, whole upper back. Just notice. And where does the back of your head meet the floor? Observe. Is it somewhere in the center of the back of your head, or is your chin tucked or up? Or are you looking slightly one way or the other? There's nothing wrong with any of those things. It's information. So just observe what's happening for you right now. So thinking of yourself again as a whole soma, just notice which parts of you have contact with the floor, are resting into the floor and come to your attention. Sense where that's comfortable, maybe where it's less comfortable, and just how connected you feel as a whole person, a whole soma. Lying on the ground, being guided through thinking about these parts that we call by different names. And again, keep your legs flat if that's comfortable, but you can bend your knees up now if you want to. And I'm going to ask you to turn your attention to your arms and your hands. Your arms go right the way up, right into your shoulders. So notice the position in which your hands have come to rest as you're focusing on your whole self. Are the backs of your hands resting on the ground, the sides like the pinky fingers, or are they palm down? And are your two hands different? They might be subtly different. They might be very different. So just notice the position that each hand is in. And then just make a conscious choice and move both hands so that they're in a different position. They have a different relationship with the floor. Different part of each hand is on contact with the ground. And just notice your breath. Observe if there are any changes in your breathing. You might want to experiment again. Move the position of both hands and notice what else happens. Does the relationship of your shoulders shift subtly with the floor? Your center maybe moves. Any other movements that you notice when you're just moving your hands? This idea that it's almost impossible to just move your hands, right? To just move your periphery is quite difficult. And just still noticing your breathing, bend up both knees, take your time. Again, notice the position of your hands as they rest into the ground, palm down, palm up, resting at different angles or the same angle, side to side. And just take a moment to see how you sense the position of each of your hands reflected in the angle of your shoulder meeting the floor. And if that question makes sense, right? And then change the position of each hand however you want to. And just notice the effects of that, if any, in your shoulder blades and anywhere else in your soma. And now we're just going to do a couple of arch and sink or arch and flatten. And you can let your hands be wherever you want them to be. They can be in a new position that you've moved them into, or they can just go back to where you might normally have them. Arch and flatten fairly well. What I'm noticing that audio is okay. Can you gently breathe in, arching your lower back, just gently as your pelvis and your chin rock down towards your feet, and just notice what your hands and your shoulders might do at the same time. Keep breathing. Gently ease out of that, releasing your lower back. Slowly let everything go and release into the ground beneath you. And really release into the ground beneath you before you go any further with this movement. Okay. So when you're ready, on a breath out, sink your center, shorten your front. Your back will curve down into the ground as your pelvis and your chin rock up slightly. The back of your neck might shorten a little. And notice what happens in each shoulder, in each hand. Keep breathing. Start to slowly ease your way, breathe your way out of that tension in your front. Paying attention to any jumps or shakes, or if you speed up at any point, anything that indicates there's some SMA there, so that you know it's there, so that you can start to smooth it out. And just rest for a moment. And we'll just do one more arch and sink. You can either follow my words or you can do one or two in your own time. As you breathe in, gently arch your lower back. Let your pelvis rock down towards your toes as the back of your neck lengthens and your chin also rocks down a little. Notice what, if anything, happens in your shoulders, your hands, and your feet. Keep breathing and start slowly releasing this tension, releasing your back and anything else that tightened or contracted when you arched your back. Keep breathing, keep observing. Notice any jumps or shakes. Be conscious of that SMA. The reason why we do these exercises, right, is to access and address SMA, to smooth it out. If you're following my words, then on your next breath out, sink your center, shorten your front, sternum to pubic bone, shorten the back of your neck, your pelvis rolls up, and just notice what happens with your hands, your shoulders, your feet. Keep breathing and breathe your way slowly out of that contracted red light type position, coming back down to rest into the mat, into the floor beneath you. And just breathe, just rest into the ground. Give your soma, your brain in particular, a chance to notice where your hands are and notice the position of your shoulders, your pelvis, your heels, and your feet into the ground beneath you. So if you're happy to have straight legs, can you lengthen one leg slowly down so that it ends up flat on the ground? And then the other, take your time and end up with both legs flat on the ground. Just sense that for a moment. See how it might feel different. Notice differences side to side. And then I'm just going to guide hand movements at this point, but I want you to notice the rest of your body, the rest of your soma, allowing it to move, even though my guidance focuses on your hands. Breathe as you need to. So, can you open up your hands so that your fingers really lengthen and your palms face up towards the ceiling, if that's possible for you? Notice if and where your arms tense, or if they want to come off the ground at all, or if they feel quite relaxed. Slowly, really slowly, in this second part of a tiny pandiculation, slow it down and notice as you release that tension, as you allow your fingers to come back to where they were, where you're in control of that movement and where perhaps there's less control. Notice which muscles are contracting and releasing, not just in your hands, but in your arms, your shoulders, your belly, your back. And let your arms and your hands rest down into gravity, into the ground beneath you. So do that once more. You might want to do it on a gentle breath in. Open up your hands, lengthening your fingers, opening up your palms. Keep breathing. Notice if your back responds, if there's a tiny little arch or not. And slow release your hands, your fingers down to rest. Notice your breath. Let everything rest. Let everything go. And now you're going to reverse that. And again, don't overdo this movement. They are very tiny movements, but they can be quite powerful. And you're just going to make two gentle fists with your hands. They can be as tight or as loose as you like, in fact, right? So breathe as you need to, make those two gentle fists and let the rest of your body, the rest of your soma respond to that however it wants to. So your scrunching up, contracting hands may well lead to other movements that you make, other contractions in your body. Notice where else you feel tension or contraction. Notice if you feel like you might want to roll your hands in towards your body, or perhaps bend at your elbows even and bring them in towards the front of your shoulders, really going into a pattern of tightness, of red light protectiveness that your soma might want to make. And just notice the effects on all of you, the rest of you, from these small hand movements. Keep breathing, but keep those fists clenched. Notice if maybe your toes came closer together, maybe your knees, maybe your back is curving a little closer to the ground. And then start that slow release, slowly letting those fists open up. Noticing if your fingers move smoothly or if there's a little bit of jumping, shaking, a lack of control. Might be a difference from hand to hand, from side to side. And just take a few breaths. Scan your soma. Notice any changes, how those small movements may have shown up your patterns or any little areas of SMA. And we're going to do that again, but you're going to add in some small jaw movements. So as you make two fists, can you also gently close your mouth and possibly clench your jaw a little bit if it feels okay for you? See what else tightens. Keep breathing. Keep your fists clenched, but see what you can let go of. Perhaps some tension in your back, your buttocks, your shoulders, and slowly release the tension in your jaw if you haven't already, while keeping those fists clenched. Notice how much you can or can't let go of in the whole of the rest of your body. Then slowly let those fists start to release out and let your hands rest into the ground. Palm up if you can, but it's not essential, and just breathe. Okay, you're going to reverse that. You're going to breathe in gently, lengthen your fingers, open your palms up to the ceiling and open your mouth. You don't have to push it. You don't have to open your mouth wide, but open it as much as you comfortably can. And slowly, in your own time, release out of that. See if you can slowly release that tension from your jaw, or if it speeds up with SMA. And then just rest for a few breaths. If your flat legs need a break, then you might want to bend them up for a few breaths. But we're going to have your legs flat along the ground for the next movement as well, just so you know. So with your legs flat, and if your legs are bent, then you can modify this slightly or imagine doing it. That's absolutely fine. You're going to focus a little more on your feet now. So first, notice their position. Notice if they feel even or if one's maybe splayed out more to the side, one's pointing much more up to the ceiling. It's all about noticing, not changing or worrying about it. At the start of this movement, though, please just make it so that your toes are pointing up to the ceiling, if that's possible for you. Yeah, and you might have to check, right? Sometimes we have to look because it's not clear what our feet and our toes are doing. I mean, I'm going to say don't overdo this movement. It's a small movement, but if you overdo it, then it can cause cramp, which nobody wants. So on a very gentle breath in, can you gently point your toes away from your center? That's all you're doing. Heels on the ground, but you're pointing your toes away. Keep breathing and just gently let your toes come back to rest, noticing if that movement is smooth or if there's any jumps or shakiness or lack of awareness. And just do that seemingly tiny movement once or twice more. Just notice what's there as you breathe in, gently pointing your toes away and slowly releasing them. Just seeing what else in your soma, in your body, comes to your attention as you do this. Okay. Now we're going to flex your feet up next. So you can bend your knees if you're feeling any discomfort with your legs being flat, because you can flex them on your heels with your knees bent. Breathe as you need to. And you're going to bring both feet, so your heels are still on the ground, but you're going to bring both feet so that your toes are coming up towards your knees. And notice what else moves, right? Your knees might move, your back might curve into the ground. Notice your belly, your shoulders, your hands. Keep breathing and slowly release those flexed feet and everything else down into the ground. So of course, if you put these movements together, this is a very tiny arch and flatten, which some of you are probably quite familiar with. So just do that one more time if you'd like to. Breathe in, point your toes, whatever the position of your legs. See what else moves. Slowly ease out of that, allowing your back, your hips, your head and your neck to get involved if they want to. Maybe on a breath out, flex your toes up towards your knees without overdoing it. See what else moves. Ease out of that. And you can do that once more in your own time, or you can just rest. And don't let my words rush you. You can rest at the end, just let everything go. Let yourself rest into the ground beneath you. So now can you just roll onto your right side, and you can put a pillow or just use your hand or your arm under your head. We won't be here for too long. So lie on your right side with your knees bent. Don't have your feet too far back, but you don't need to be in that kind of upright chair position for something like a side bend. Just lie as comfortably as you can on your right side. Okay. So here it's kind of interesting to see whether your habit leads or whether you follow my words. I mean, it's interesting for you to see. So just observe this. So lying on your side, can you point your toes and open your mouth wide at the same time? Maybe even yawn. And notice what happens in the rest of your body, in your center. Does your back arch? And then slowly ease your feet back to rest and let your mouth, your jaw, return to rest. Noticing any jumps or shakes or speeding up any SMA. And I'm reminded here of Tom Hanna talking about how being slack-jawed is a good way to be, right? So notice where rest is for your jaw. Is it slack-jawed or is there some tension? Just notice. So just reverse that. This time you're going to gently close your mouth a little tighter, maybe clench your jaw as you flex your feet and toes up towards your knees. Notice what else moves. Does your front shorten? Or does it resist that and just let the periphery move? And then slowly ease your mouth to rest as you ease your feet to rest. Noticing if your back and other tense parts of you follow. And now just experiment once or twice with putting these together, right? It's kind of like an arch and flatten on your side, but leading with your feet, your ankles, and your jaw and your neck. So you might want to experiment with smaller movements or bigger movements, whatever works for you, just paying attention to what happens in your experience. Okay, and there's no rush here. You have time to not just complete the one you're on, but do a whole other one if you want to. But when you're ready, you can roll over onto your back and just take a rest for a while. And just notice how you feel from side to side, from front to back, what your relationship is with your contact with the ground beneath you. And take a bit of time to just rest on your back. And then if you're happy to lie on your back with your legs out flat, then you're just going to return your attention to your feet and bring them a little further apart than they are already. Really just a little, maybe half an inch or an inch further apart, so that your feet are just resting on your heels a little bit further apart. You can make these movements tiny. You might just imagine them. And take this slowly so that you're following my words, so the movement makes sense. So just take a gentle breath in and move your big toes away from each other so that the outside of your feet, your little toes, are just coming a little closer to the ground. And let your legs, your hips move to accommodate this. Keep breathing and slowly release back. It might be a tiny movement, it might be a big movement for you. And the important part is the slow release back, not just letting them go back to center. And then reverse that. This time you're going to gently bring your big toes in towards each other so they might touch. Notice what else moves with your big toes meeting together like this. Does the back of your pelvis open up? Is the front of your center tighter? What about your shoulders and your arms, your neck? Do they respond or not? Release out of that. And then you can experiment with this a little bit, maybe involving your hands. So it would be like a very small version of the flower, okay? So you gently move your big toes away from each other and maybe roll or spiral out your arms so that your palms come up towards the ceiling. Notice if your back arches just a little. And then maybe as you breathe out, you're bringing your toes closer together. Spiral your hands in, bringing the backs of them close up against your side or the tops of your legs. So again, you're just experimenting to see if these small movements have an effect on your center and other parts of your soma. And finish the one that you're doing in your own time. And take a few breaths, a few moments, just to rest and to notice your connection with the ground beneath you. And then can you roll over, no rush, onto your left side? Again, if you need something under your head, then use a pillow or something, or just support your head with your arm. Remembering not to have your feet too close to your body, not too close to your buttocks, because you don't want to put yourself into that green light position. To start with, be as neutral as you can, whatever that means for you right now. So when you're lying on your side, can you first gently clench your jaw, bring your teeth together as you flex your feet and your toes up towards your knees. Allow the rest of your soma to follow. See what movement follows. And then slowly ease your mouth to rest, to slacken, as you ease your feet back to rest. Noticing what follows and noticing if some parts of you remain tense. Take a breath, and then point your toes as you open your mouth wide. Again, maybe even yawning. Notice what happens in your center. Slowly, with awareness, ease your feet and your mouth back to rest. Notice not just jumps or shakes, but if you speed up at any point, if you can't control the speed of the movement, and that is SMA. And then just do each of those movements once more in your own time. You might also want to do movement to compare it, where you start the movement from your center. So you might want to consciously start this movement by arching your back, doing that kind of arch movement that you're familiar with, releasing out of that, and then sinking your center. Just to compare those movements, how they feel, how your soma responds. And when you've done that, you have time, so you can continue to do that for a little bit, and then you can roll gently onto your back and rest for a good few breaths. If you're still lying on your side, you do not have to rush. I am not going straight into another movement. If you're already lying on your back, then can you bend both legs and just notice where your feet are? So if you just bent them, you may well go into some kind of habit, right? Where you're used to putting your feet in this position. I just want you to experiment a little. So you may know this, especially if you teach this stuff or if you've been a student for some time, but just experiment anyway. If your feet are too far out, even by a few millimeters, then you might have a little arch in your back and your front might be contracted, your pelvis rocked up if your feet are too close to your body. So just take this opportunity to do a little experimenting with moving your feet a little further out, a little closer in to your body, so that you can find that sort of sweet spot for you right now in this moment of how you can have both legs bent, both knees bent, feet flat on the ground, putting in the least possible effort to be in that position without throwing yourself into a green light or a red light position, even on a micro level. And of course, this changes from moment to moment for most of us. So, you know, it's just an experiment. So if you feel that you're in a good position, then you can either give me a thumbs up or just be in that good position. Thank you. And we're just going to do a couple of hip hikers on each side. Again, I don't know if that's a widely used term. I'm guessing it is. You can put your hands on your hips for this movement if you like, or just on your right hip for now. And I'm going to ask you first to release any residual tension in your back insofar as that's possible, by first taking a gentle breath in and very slightly arching your lower back so that you can release it. So release your back onto the ground. And then breathe as you need to slide your right hip up along the ground towards your right waist and armpit. Allow your head to roll slightly to the right if it wants to. Allow your armpit to come down so that you're shortening your right side by hiking that hip. Keep breathing. Slowly release that right hip down, noticing where it moves smoothly and where it might be shaky. And just let it come back to rest. Do that one more time. So you're sliding your right hip up along the ground, shortening your right side, and you'll notice that your left side lengthens at the same time. And ease that right hip back down to rest. And now just shift your attention over to your left hip and just do 2 on this side. Breathe as you need to, release your back if you need to, and slide your left hip up along the ground towards your left waist and armpit. Your head might roll gently to the left. Ease that tension. Ease that shortened left side to bring both sides back to rest. And just do that one more time in your own time, noticing where is smooth, where you have full awareness of your movement and where you don't. And just take a breath or two to rest and integrate that information. And if it's possible for you, can you just have just your left leg flat along the ground, keeping your right leg bent up? Or you can put a bolster under your left knee if you need to. You can imagine these movements. So quite often, people, including people in this class, right, might find it difficult to shorten one side. I just want to do a short exploration of how we can make one side shorter and the different muscles and sensations and full body patterns that involves if we shorten one side in a different way. So can you focus first on the bottom of your left heel and just lengthen away, and it might be a small movement, lengthen away the bottom of your left heel out along the ground so your left side lengthens. And just notice if your right side shortens very much or if it doesn't. And then slowly release that lengthening, breathing all the time as you need to. And just let that go. And now just point your left toes away. Notice if that lengthens your left side. Notice if anything happens in your right side or not. And ease those pointed toes back to rest. And then focus on the muscles in your side, in your right side, and slide that right hip up towards your waist and armpit. And see how that might feel very different for you. And then slow release out of that. And then just bring your left leg up so that both your knees are bent. And just notice how that feels, how you feel side to side. And then just let your right leg flatten out onto the ground so that your left leg remains bent and your right leg is flat. And then first, put your attention into that left hip, so the hip on the bent leg side, and slide that left hip up towards your left waist and armpit. And ease that out. back to rest. And then bring your attention to your right toes, your right foot. Breathe as you need to and point your right toes away. Lengthen that leg a little bit so that your right side lengthens. Notice just how your left side responds and ease out of that. And lastly, just put your attention on the bottom of your right heel and lengthen the bottom of your right heel away from the center of your body. Notice if any other part of you wants to lengthen along that side, and notice what happens on your left side. Ease gently out of that, not staying in that position too long. And once you've completed that and you feel at rest, then you can make a choice. You can either have both knees bent or you can have both legs flat on the ground. And you're just, again, going to give yourself a short Soma scan. So you're noticing the relationship of your heels and your feet into the ground beneath you. The backs of your legs, how your buttocks meet the ground beneath you, where the contact is with your buttocks and the back of your pelvis, your lower back. The back of your rib cage, if that meets the floor at any point. Notice any sensation in your shoulder blades, the whole shoulder girdle, the back of your head, and how your arms and your hands rest into the ground beneath you. And just take a few breaths just to notice what's there. And now, if your legs aren't bent, can you slowly bend up both legs? So both knees are bent, both feet flat on the ground. Feel that new position, feel the sensation of your feet into the ground, how that changes your relationship with the floor. And have your arms out on the ground beside you. The angle doesn't matter too much, whatever feels right or comfortable for you. If you can you start with your palms facing up towards the ceiling? They don't have to be fully up, but ideally with some of the back of your hand in contact with the ground beneath you. And in this position, can you breathe in, lengthen your fingers and open up your palm to the ceiling? And open your jaw at the same time. Yawn if you need to, or if you'd like to. Notice where there's tension in the whole of your soma and start to release that tension as a whole full body pattern. Use your breath, use your self-awareness to just release everything. Release your hands, your fingers, your jaw, whatever else has tensed up. Follow my words, or you can do this in your own time a couple of times. When you breathe out, clench both hands into fists, gentle or tighter, it's okay. Close your mouth, gently clench your jaw if that's okay for you, but keep breathing. And go into whatever pattern feels right. Your Hands might want to come off the ground in towards your chest or your shoulders to complete this pattern of tightness. And then slowly start to breathe your way out of this tight position. Slowly start letting those clenched hands, clenched fingers release out onto the ground. And you can do that once or twice more, breathing in and lengthening your fingers, opening up your palms, opening your mouth, noticing all the other movements in response in the rest of your soma. And when you breathe out, clenching your jaw and clenching your hands into fists. Now I'm going to ask you to, when you finish the movement you're on, to rest your legs out flat on the ground. And you might wish also to repeat that movement just in a very small way, adding in your toes. So you might want to breathe in, open out your hands, gently point your toes, release out of that, and then clench your fists and bring your toes up. You can do that, or you can just rest. And just scan your soma. Notice what comes to your attention, any areas of ease, areas of tightness. So I'm going to give you a choice as well. I'm going to ask you in a minute or two to come to standing. But if you want at this point to stay lying on the ground, then that's going to be okay too. So you kind of see what you or your soma wants. If it wants to stay lying down for a bit longer, then you'll be able to follow my guidance from that position, or imagine yourself standing up. But if you're going to come up to standing, then slowly start to come up now. Eyes closed as you come up, if that's okay for you. And come up through sitting or kneeling, and make it really slow. You've got plenty of time to do this. So those of you who are coming to standing, just take your time. I'm just going to speak for a moment to those who are still lying down. Just say, notice your relationship with the ground beneath you. Sense the connection between your feet or your heels and the ground, the back of your legs, the back of your pelvis, and any connection between the ground and your lower back, your shoulder blades, the back of your head. Notice how connected or disconnected you feel as a whole soma, lying on the ground, supported by the ground. If you're standing or if you're lying down, you can also follow this as best you can. Notice your breath. Allow yourself to breathe. Notice the position of your hands in space. Are they released and relaxed down? Which way are your hands, your palms facing? Just notice. And sense how your feet meet the ground. Again, notice if your weight is evenly spread or if you feel a bit more weight into the front or the back or the inside or the outside of one or both feet. And really allow and welcome your connection to the ground, to the earth beneath your feet. And then bring your attention up your legs, all the way up to your pelvic girdle, your buttocks, your pelvis, your hips. And just notice how all of that whole part of you feels in space. Does it feel connected to the whole of the rest of you? Does it feel supported by your legs and your feet and the ground beneath you? Notice your breath. Breathe as you need to. Bring your attention to your rib cage. Sometimes you might want to put your hands on your rib cage to really feel it. Does it feel supported by your pelvis, your legs, and your feet into the ground? Whether your hands are on your rib cage or not, can you feel the movement? Can you feel your breath? Just notice. And then notice your shoulders, your whole shoulder girdle. How does that feel? Do one or both of your shoulders feel held in space with some tension? Or do they feel supported and held by your rib cage, your pelvis, your feet, and the whole of the earth that is beneath your feet, beneath your soma? And bring your attention to your head and your neck. Are they supported by and weighted down into the whole of the rest of your soma? You can shift around, you can sway if you need to, you can move around a little if you need to. And just bring your attention to the position of your hands and your arms. I invite you to do this standing still, but you can do this walking around. It's absolutely no problem to do that. So walk around if you need to. Can you move your hands, if they're not already in this position, so that your palms are facing behind you? Notice how that brings your shoulders inwards and notice your breath. So just stand or move with your palms facing behind you. And then move your hands so that your palms are facing in towards the center of your body. Your palms are down by your legs, your thighs. The backs of your hands are pointing away from your body. And notice your breath. So take a moment to notice your breath in this position. And then notice your breath as you open up your palms to face forward. And let your arms move however they want to. And at this point, I would invite you to move around the space that you're in. As you walk around, you might want to experiment with the positions of your hands. Walk around with your palms facing backwards. Walk around with your palms facing inwards. And take a few steps with your palms facing forwards, noticing your chest, your belly, your breathing responses to those positions. And can I ask you to just come back and stand on your mat for a short period of time? Close your eyes again if you're happy to do that. And with your eyes closed, can you just look, right? If your eyes were open, look slightly over to your right, very slowly. And slowly bring your head back to where center is with your eyes closed. Take a breath in that third part of the pandiculation where you're just resting and taking in information. And then slowly turn with your eyes still closed to look to your left. And slowly, slowly bring your head back to center. And just do that once or twice more each side, allowing the rest of your soma to move if you want it to, so you can make this into a larger full body movement, if that makes sense to your soma right now. And when you finish, like looking from side to side, if your eyes are still closed, then maybe put your hands over your eyes and slowly open them into the darkness. Take your hands away and look at the space around you. If your eyes are already open, then just look at the space around you. And so the movement part of this session today is coming to a close now, but you're welcome to leave now if you need to or you want to, but you're also welcome to stay on for a short discussion if that's something you'd like to do. Thank you. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you so much.